Stand and join me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any agenda adjustments?
Yep.
Did you say yes?
No.
Okay. 2, to approve the minutes of our February 8th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing how there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay. And now I'll open the floor for public comment. If anybody is here or online that would like to speak, please make sure when you come up to the mic that you identify your name and the town that you are from. Seeing as there's none, we'll continue. Any petitions and communications? No. Reports will be superintendent's report.
Yes, so you have this in your packet. So you can see that our participation with the Class B and St. Dom's Co-op, we were state champions in indoor track and field. So that was exciting. I think we have 2 athletes, Brian? How many athletes? 2?
We had 2, yeah.
2, so we'll take that as a big win. And then I shared with you teacher negotiations continues to work. Our team has been putting a lot of hours and getting organized and meeting with their team. And so far, we're moving forward. And you'll get more updates when we're ready to. Kelly, I noted in here that Kelly Glizzo, am I saying that right? No, probably. Gilzo. Stow. Is working with RSU4 to start a community garden. She's very involved in getting her adult ed director license. She's in her coursework, and she's in a big project, and we want to support that, and we think it's a great project around community gardens. So we're working with her. She has great vision and excitement, and we're working on details. Where is it going to be? How are we going to work it? And so she is meeting with the Sabattis Primary School to get their input from the staff. And so we're still working out the details. She's going to come to an upcoming board meeting to tell you more information. Then I wanted to tell you about, we had a really good time reading in the Read Across America. Becky did an excellent job, the literacy specialist at our primary school and intermediate school, just putting the activities, and teachers were really involved. We had Oak Hill High School students going down, and they're doing Reader's Theater, had to be, I think you're doing that coming up. But a lot of fun, good activities, and getting kids reading and enjoy reading, so that was a lot of fun, being guest speakers, guest readers. And then we also had fun at Winter Carnival, and I'm sure Marco will talk about it at his next presentation, but a lot of positive energy, everybody excitement, and on Friday a lot of competitions. The staff we thought we were doing really well with the hoops. You have to get in a line and you have to put the hoop through and not break, and we were doing really well, and then we died out. But the students had a lot of fun, and it was fun to watch them in action. And then the update around construction, things are slowly but surely getting put back together. But what was great is the students were back in person, and the staff were back in, so lots of positives there. And then inviting you to the dress rehearsal tomorrow night. I hope you can make it for the North of the Borough. Marcus Gallagher has written the one-act play, and we get a first glimpse at it tomorrow night. So hopefully you'll be able to go to that. So wanted to tell you about it. And I know that Brian Daniels will be talking about unified basketball. We were at the game today, and it was very exciting as always, so I know you're going to talk more about that.
Thank you. Assistant Superintendent report.
Okay, so as many of you know, as I've been doing reports, I took over as food service director back in December of 2021. And in the past months, I've met with 3 different food service directors to kind of talk about what their day in the life looks like, their responsibilities, to kind of think about how we could really streamline our services. I will say most districts our size have a full-time nutrition director. In looking at, as we're building our budget, you will notice that I am not asking for the RSU to add a nutrition director at this time. Do I say we need one? Yes, but I can't logistically come to you as a board when I'm sitting in front of administrators and when I looked at your budget goals to kind of say, what are our needs? We definitely need other administrators and other needs in the district. So having that said, so in the past, I've been doing everything in the pink and the blue. So everything in the pink all the way to the right. It's not sustainable, and I honestly don't have the capacity, or I don't have the knowledge to know everything about food service. I'm an educator. I'm not someone that's been trained enough to know all the different components. So we have worked with Lisbon, and we are going to do a contracted service, and so we're going to kind of break up, and so you can kind of see what the workflow is going to continue to look like. So I will continue to do all the things in the pink, and we're going to start transitioning this year from March to June. I will still do some of those pieces. We've been in literally daily contact lately to start working on those transitional things. For example, we just did last week a food order. We have to do an entire order for next year as of last week. And so we're ordering all our hamburgers and chicken nuggets and 1,500 pounds of cheese. You'd be surprised on what you have to do. So we will work with Allison Lovett, who is their full-time food service director, to help support the needs. So that, I just wanted to kind of share what that workload looks like and what that will continue to look like as we transition through next year. I'll check and adjust, and I'll share with you next year how that's going for her as well as for the RSU. Any questions?
So before you were doing this, who did it? Did we have a food service director?
So it was actually combined with John's position, and then they also hired a consultant.
Thank you.
Thank you. The financial report will be done when we get to finance and facilities report. Administrators get the night off. See you all next meeting. And we'll start with the directors. They're ready to go. Directors meeting, Norma Jean.
Good evening, everybody. We have a table set. This is so cool. Okay. All right. So let's see if this will work tonight. Come on. No. Hold on. John, you may have to click for me. Nope. I can do that. Hold on. I'm getting there. All right. I'm connected. We're good. Technology. We love it. All right, so I thought I would update you on all the fun stuff that's been happening at the high school as far as construction and cleaning, and John has updated you, but a couple of the areas tech-wise that were hit by the water was our server room. That's always fun. At least it was bottom water and not top water. If it was top water, it would have been really horrible. And then our storage area out back, so it hit both storage rooms out back. And so we talked about possibility of moving the server room, huge money amount to move all that. And so they actually went in and, did the 2-foot flood cut in our server room. And then, they're doing the same thing out back in our storage room. And then, did the sheetrocking and everything. So we took down, the server room on, Friday the 17th at 2 p.m. We took down everything, the phones, the cameras, the servers, everything, moved the servers out of the room to get it ready. Then we went in on Sunday and Monday to prepare in time for the contractors to get in there to do all the cutting, the sheetrocking they needed the entire week. And then got it all up with Jordan's help on Friday, including a server. We had a server that needed to be replaced during February vacation that was in play before the rain started. And so you had two variables. We took a server room apart, put it back together, and put a new server in the mix. And for a little bit, it was a little bit stressful. But the kids were back, so it was great. So I figured I would show a picture. So the server room at the high school looked like that last summer on the left. And then we got it cleaned up and beautiful and looked like that. And then the rain came. And so we ended up bagging and tagging our server room. So we had to move the racks away from the wall. We had to get the carpet out of there, which is great. We don't really want carpet in the server room anyhow. And so we kind of shifted it around. And then working with Sam and Katie, we were planning on putting a new rack in this summer. So I'm like, well, if we're taking it apart now, we might as well get the new rack in now and do that all together. And so we actually put in a new rack on the left, which accommodates our new servers. And now we have the spaghetti again, but we'll clean that up during April break. But the priority was to put it back together and get it running and not care about the cleaning right now. We'll clean it during April vacation, get it all organized. And so we moved, the new server went on the left for the rack servers. We moved the other rack over here to the other side so we could actually put the Siemens server, our new server, put a monitor, kind of clean it up, make it a little better looking. We had to get it up before the painters came in, so later we'll have to do the painting and the tile. But for now, the priority was to get everything running so we get kids back in, phones back up, and everything. So, but I figured pictures are worth, like all kinds of words there. But it was a team effort all the way across to get this done. And like I said, we talked about moving it in various places, and the amount was like multiple, like 20,000, 30,000 to move the server room. So, any questions for me? Okay, thank you. Now you get to click for yourself, John.
Right.
Left mouse up. Or the scroll.
All right, good evening. Let's see. So just a couple quick news and announcements. We have high temperature probe installations going on currently. The middle school and the Sabattis Primary School both have those probes installed. Carrie Ricker will be done a little bit at a later date. The purpose of these probes is they're going to be tied into our fire and security monitoring. So in the event that one of our coolers or freezers gets above a certain temperature, it will alert the staff, even off hours, so we don't come in after a long weekend to a warm freezer and thousands of dollars worth of food that we have to replace and figure out quickly. So the primary school, the middle school have those probes in. Carrie Rickers is coming up next, and then with some help with an electrician and ER Field, we'll get those wired up and on our security system. And the other great thing is Carrie Ricker Playground. So as you can see on the right, those are renderings of the new playground that's going into Carrie Ricker. We're scheduled for a July install, I'm guessing roughly 2 weeks. The playground was starting to fall apart a little bit. Some of the pieces of equipment were not age appropriate for the kids. As we know, that was originally built as a middle school. It doesn't actually really house middle school age kids. So some of the stuff was a little too big. We're having some injuries. So this new playground, there's one structure on the playground that's staying. Everything else is going. But you see new swing set, new benches, borders, wood chips for fall protection, the whole bit. So we're really excited with that. We're doing a same or a similar color scheme to the structure that's going to stay on site, so it'll all look like it flows together. And about 2-3 weeks ago, I went to Carrie Ricker and talked with staff and got their input. So we added a wheelchair accessible ramp to get onto the playground over the border. There is an ADA compliant swing, kind of hard to see, I'm sorry, but is there a cursor? Yeah, right there. So that's an ADA compliant swing. And a few other great sensory pieces that have been incorporated into the playground to accommodate a lot of students. So we're pretty excited about that.
And that is being funded through the ESSER fund.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, through the ESSER funds. And we're all coming in under budget there, even with the ESSER funds. So very excited for that to come into play in July. And again, quick news announcement on the high school. I know you guys have heard a lot about it, but just from an operations standpoint. So the science wing is the big wing. Like I had said in finance facilities, we've walled off the science wing. That wing is not accessible to students. It's under negative air pressure, so any construction dust or debris is being exhausted appropriately. This picture on the right is it's hard to recognize even for people at the high school, but that's the chemistry lab. It's down to studs, and all the cabinets and ceiling and everything has been taken out due to the water damage. Like I've said in previous reports, 30,000 gallons went through just that one room. So a lot of damage, but a lot of work being done in the meantime. Guidance, kitchen, history, in the media, all those rooms short of some flooring repairs and the cove base around the edges. Everything else has been done and repaired, and kids are in those parts of the building so we can keep schooling going. And then the industrial arts wing will be done last, because those repairs can be accessible while kids are in school. The construction crew can come through the back entrance of the school. It's already inherently loud in an industrial arts classroom, so we can focus on that towards the end. But we're working with the insurance company, particularly with building repair and then content replacement. I've given the school plenty of time to add to their list of things that got damaged so that we don't forget about anything. That'll get sent out later this week. Sam and Katie and I have all been very diligent about reaching out to the insurance company. They're going to cut checks for the vendors directly, so we don't see it come out of budget. But as you know, with insurance companies, sometimes those things take a little time, so we're working through it as quickly as we can. And then on the transportation side, just a couple quick things. I'm really excited. So I unintentionally got in touch with NTI, which is a school. They have a school in Scarborough, they have a school in Bangor. It's a trade school, it's a career development school. And when I was talking to someone at Dennis Foods, they said, well, we get a lot of our CDL drivers from there. Have you ever thought about bus drivers? I said, no, great idea. So I reached out to them, and we both shared a similar concern about you've heard me talk about the entry-level driver training, the new program that the feds have put in place, that roadblock, right? Mm-hmm. So we've talked a little bit about that, but she's got some great information that we're trying to share back and forth. Basically, in a nutshell, the roadblock is having qualified instructors for what they call the road and range, which is like the driving portion, and then the classroom portion as well. But she's been great to deal with at NTI. Her name is Deb, and she's going to be reaching out to actually some state reps, because she thinks that while I think a lot of us in the school district and other districts know the issue or the shortage, maybe the state populace as a whole doesn't know. So if we can reach out to state reps, they can put out some more information about it. Maybe that gets us somewhere a little bit quicker. So I'm hopeful that in speaking with the state reps that we can promote maybe some new career opportunities for some young drivers. And NTI is working on developing their bus driver program so that they can meet the ELDT requirements, but also put out more potential future drivers. And we could work with a partnership to maybe get some of those interested drivers. So that would be a good way to get some people in. And then just quickly, the weekly bus schedule emails. I don't know if any of you have seen them, but on Sundays around 12:30 p.m., I'll be sending out the schedule on the bottom right that you can see. Basically is a quick blurb of what buses are scheduled or not scheduled to be going out for that week. I think it's helpful to be in communication with the district and what's going on as I know it at that current time. Of course, as things come up, we put the robocalls out. We have gotten a lot further with doing all calls by individual buses. We're going to do some test runs with that so that in the future, if a certain color bus goes down, the whole district doesn't get the call. But those are going out every Sunday at 12:30. I link that directly. And like I said, as I know it at the time, I put out what I know is canceled or delayed. And I think it's helpful for communication purposes. And unless you have any other questions, that's all I have. Whoa. Start left to right, I guess. Diane?
This goes back to Carrie Ricker and the playground. Are they addressing the drainage issue in that little walkway going down to one of the entrances?
Like
the
in
back
between
entrance?
the playground and the building where it goes back to the fields, that it's not covered under the ESSER grant, so it would be an out-of-pocket expense. Something certainly to put on the 5-year plan that I'm looking to build. I've already got that in place, but I want to talk with some more people about, hey, what do you notice? What are some things?
I mean, it's awful there in the springtime.
Yeah.
The mud is horrendous,
Yep.
and the puddles of water are awful.
And the teachers at Carrie Ricker actually asked me about that, and I said, unfortunately, it doesn't fall under the parameters of the grant, so I can't tie that in.
Because if we have fire, like a fire drill or anything, it's hard to walk through there because it's so bad. It's so muddy.
And this time of year, the hot and the cold weather, ice buildup. Yeah, absolutely. So something to think about in a 5-year plan. Absolutely. Robbie?
Yeah, Diane brought up a good point about drainage for the playground. I know in the wintertime, when I used to work at Green, our playground would turn into a puddle and then freeze. So the wood chips would be negated for fall protection, and we had somebody fall off a slide, top of a slide, and land on ice, and really mess up their shoulder and back. So I guess my point would be is, I think we need to be aware that even though we have wood chips on that in the springtime, summertime, fall, that playground really is not safe in the wintertime when it gets covered by ice.
So you think just improper drainage underneath?
Yeah, so I'm
Okay.
thinking we have to really look at drainage, and I don't even know if it would drain off, because once it freezes, it's froze for the season.
Right. The only thing that, there is a drainage pipe that goes from the road culvert directly under the playground
Right.
into a ravine, basically, so I don't know if there's a way to tie into that.
I mean, 9 times
Drainage
out of
flow
10,
through.
when there's snow on it, I get it, you know, if a
Yeah,
kid falls
sure.
off a slide, they're gonna land in the snow. But there are certain times, like at the end of the year, this time of year, when
Yeah.
the snow is starting to melt, it gets cold at night, freezes, that first group of kids go out, and if they're not soaking wet from playing on the playground, if they fall off, they're landing on ice.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So something to talk about with
Yeah.
with Ben Schaefer then, who's
right,
working to build the
Yeah.
playground for us. Okay. Good.
I didn't know if there was an estimated timeline where the repairs at the high school are going to be fixed.
So again, the industrial arts, we're looking to push towards the end. We're trying to focus a lot of our time and energy on the science wing, getting that up and going. It's a good question. The biggest hurdle, I believe, is the cabinetry that has to be replaced in the science wing. That has a lead time with the manufacturer. The best estimates right now are 8 to 10 weeks for lead time on those cabinets. The other classrooms surrounding that wing are in a little bit better shape and can be taken care of a little bit quicker. So I know I've talked with Marco, and I'm going to continue to talk with him and others about the possibility of maybe partially opening up the wing to accommodate some classroom spaces or alleviate some of those issues. But we'd have to look at the operation logistics of what that might look like. That would be taking down a temporary wall and rebuilding another temporary wall and keeping kids out of a construction zone. So there's a few more things involved there. I don't have an accurate timeline. I think it really just depends on the lead time for some of the materials, which they're telling me are weeks at this point.
And then have we reached out to any of our local representatives, as you said, NTI?
NTI?
Was reaching out to some other state representatives. Have we reached out to any of our local representatives to help drive the bus discussion at all, or?
I haven't, no, but that's certainly something that we could look into and work a little bit more on. Yep.
The piece of equipment that's staying at K. Ricker, is that the piece of equipment that was purchased by the PTA?
That's the slide, I bet.
So the piece of equipment that's staying is sort of like the center focal
Yeah.
climbing.
Yeah.
So the red tall structure, kind of
Yes.
to the left, that's too tall and not age appropriate, so that's coming down. The swing set is coming down. The benches, the trash cans. So the main, I guess, kind of like the main structure, the focal point, that's staying. Everything else is being added around it.
Because the PTA raised a lot of money to put that piece of equipment there, so I just want to make sure that we're not.
Yeah.
That brings me to a point. Is there any of that equipment that can be sold off or utilized at the middle school, or are we just scrapping all of this?
Well, that's a good question. I think it all depends on how it can be disassembled. Some of that, I don't know how it's fixed into the ground. If it's if the pillars basically holding up the equipment are driven right into concrete, is that going to be something that we can easily take apart, or is it all bolted? I think that's a good I mean, we're talking months into the summer that we're going to start this project. So we have time to talk about those things, and if there's a way to reallocate it. The only trouble I do foresee, and I've had this conversation with installers, is that a lot of companies don't want to touch and install stuff that they don't sell or that they promote because it's a huge liability. So I had an issue at the middle school. I had to fix something, and it took me a long time to find someone who would be willing to fix it because they didn't want to take on the liability of something they didn't put in. But all discussions that are worth having, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we
Even
could
if we donate
if we
it
could
to
move it around.
worthy causes.
Some of those
Yeah.
pieces are broken, though.
Yep.
The kids would go on these gliders, those are all broken.
Yeah, but if there's some, I mean, even if it's just chains in the swing, and we can donate, I mean, I'd be open to looking at all of those opportunities,
Can we
absolutely.
address the drainage before we start that project in that case? And it's not till.
We have a little bit of wiggle room in what's left of that money, and that I think would fall under the grant in a whole. I'm a little concerned if we're going to be out of budget and then having to work into local budget to address those issues, but I can certainly talk with the company and see what that might look like.
Ruined because of a drainage
Can the
situation.
PTA raise more money?
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so just a comment, for years and years, we've been trying to get those temperature gauges in our freezers, especially after we lost how much it was.
A lot last year at Libby
Was
Dozer.
it last year? even?
Oh, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's primary.
Yeah, so it's been, we've lost, I thought we'd done it like 5 years ago because we had a big loss once before too. So it'll be nice to have those in.
Yeah, we've got it at those 3 schools. We're running into some issues with age of equipment, be that either the food equipment or the security system at the high school in Libby Tozier, so that's why we're not doing those yet, but those would be in a future plan. I'd like to have all the schools be monitored so we can, nip a
Yeah.
problem in the butt before it becomes a bigger one.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I just have a couple of short things to talk about tonight, to share. Oops,
I think it's a
I'm with you.
mouse.
Sorry. Maybe I'm not with you.
Is it a mouse, Norma Jean?
Yeah, I am right, right or left? Oh, sorry. So the first thing I want to talk about is Mrs. Taylor's functional life skills program at the middle school. She has knocked it out of the park yet again. She and her students spent several weeks preparing for a bakery cart event where they had to learn what it was like to wear uniforms. They learned a lot about grooming. They learned a lot about self-regulation and dealing with the public, customer service, not to mention the cooking aspects of this. So they cooked all day for this event, and they took 3 or 4 carts around to the entire building and offered free food, free breakfast food, and fresh brewed coffee all day long. They did mini fruit tarts, they did chocolate chip cookies, they did brownies, and they did coffee cake, and it was a really big hit, and kids just loved it. And one of the things about Mrs. Taylor's program is it's fully self-funded because they run a school store all year long, so they're able to buy all their own supplies and everything. It's great. And there she is with her top chefs. The other thing I wanted to just mention was Julie Fletcher and Kristen Archer, the resource room teachers, 3rd and 4th grade at Carrie Ricker, participated along with all of our teachers and all of our buildings in Read Across America Week. So the 3rd and 4th grade students enjoyed having high school guests come down and read to them and with them. And then the 3rd and 4th grade also just swapped, they exchanged books and reading among themselves as well. And there was a science assembly, I think, that they were preparing for as well. So they were reading books about sinking and floating. So then the reading groups sort of collected all their own items and decided what they were going to participate with in the experiment to see what would sink or float. So I was talking to Kristen Archer about it, and she said they just had a blast with that entire week. Kids wore costumes, and there were a lot of other guests also who came, which I'm sure people will be talking about in the principal reports in the future. That's all I have.
Ryan?
Good evening. A couple updates to talk about. Feel like I haven't spoken to you guys since almost the beginning of winter season. So There we go. All right. So first things first, some of you might have known, I kind of tasked each of my athletic programs this winter to pick a community event or some sort of organization that we could raise money for. So our basketball programs both decided they wanted to raise money for the Shriners Children's Hospital. So it's pretty awesome. We reached out to Madison. Due to weather, the game got rescheduled like 3 times, but it was initially supposed to be a triple header. We were going to play a JV boys basketball, boys varsity, and then girls varsity all in one night. It ended up splitting into 2 nights. But you can see the pictures here. Both teams purchased customized shirts that everyone wore to kind of warm up together. We did 50-50 and other various events at the game. So the top is the Oak Hill and Madison boys teams, and the bottom is the Oak Hill and Madison girls teams. So we did raise just about $1,200 for the Shriners Children's Hospital, which is pretty huge. We've reached out to the hospital. We're in the process of trying to see, of course, this would need to be approved at another level, but we're seeing if they're open to it first, to see if we could bring our athletes down to the hospital to meet with patients and kind of go through that. But with COVID and things in that scenario, I'm still not sure if they're letting people in. So there was also the option of potentially having patients come to the school and have that kind of interaction. So I'm still kind of working through that. When I get more details, hopefully I'll be able to bring that to you guys soon. But I thought it was a pretty great opportunity. We also had some rec nights where we invited all of our rec programs, celebrated our future Raiders. So we invited all of our rec girls and boys basketball programs to both senior nights. Got an awesome crowd. It was huge. And then on the boys senior night, we invited all the boys teams out onto the court, took a picture with the team, and then same for the girls on the left there. So that was really fun, especially when they call out first and second graders and you see the littles running out onto the court and they don't know where they're going, and it was just it was a fun night. So it was good to see them all and get them involved, and they look up to the high school kids naturally. So it's just good to kind of bridge that gap and get them more involved at a younger age. As Katie mentioned earlier, we do have a co-op with St. Dom's for our indoor track in the winter, and they were the Class B state champs. I wanted to quote their coach there, Dan Campbell. "We were the mouse that roared." It was pretty awesome. They had 5 athletes that competed. One of them was an Oak Hill athlete. He happens to be a homeschooled athlete, but he's still in our district. And I believe, so they didn't actually compete in any of like the throwing or field events. It was just running events. But between the 5 of them, they swept the floor to win a state championship. So, of course, it's not technically an Oak Hill state championship, but we still contributed. So worth celebrating. Athletic Leadership Council. So this is kind of something I've been working on all year. Beginning of the year, I asked coaches each to nominate one athlete from their team, and I've been meeting with them. Initially, it was bi-weekly. That didn't really work, trying to find enough time. So now we're meeting monthly for an hour, and we branch it into the Raider Connection time, so they don't lose as much class time. They only lose about 30 minutes of class time. But every time we meet, we have a variety of discussions from, this is just an example of one of our topics, what advice would you give a first-year coach? So there's about 12 of them. We sat around a table, talked about it, and then I'm going to be compiling like a handbook of all these that eventually I'll give to every coach at the beginning of the season. And it's just updated feedback from athletes. Nice. So it's pretty awesome. From other things we talked about were how to improve sports banquets. We actually just voted on that this week, where we're going to kind of change the process on how we've done sports banquets. And it's all been athlete driven, so it's all their choice. And I'm just kind of fostering the conversation. Student section, they want to name our student section. That's a topic for another time. We'll let that one go a little bit. Community event, same thing. Like I mentioned, basketball did Shriners. My vision for this is that this committee or council will pick one event or one organization to sponsor, and then all of our athletic programs over the course of the year will do activities towards it. So it'll kind of be like a yearly focus instead of just season. So different things. And then lastly, mascot, which I did invite 3 members of the council to come and speak today, because this was kind of their choice. So I'll ask them to come up here. So we have Trent Druin, Aubrey McElhaney, and Landon Dennis. And they're going to speak a little bit about what we kind of went through as far as mascots. So as some of you know, kind of out with the old, these were some of the Oak Hill Raiders mascots that have been used at the high school for athletics for some time now. The MVC website, they're outdated. They need to be updated. So I'll kind of pass it off to these three. You want to hit the right clicker there, and you can kind of see what we worked on. Yep.
Okay, so this all started in November, and as you can see here, wait, go back. How do I go back? Okay, so our logo right now, this is our logo. It is quite friendly,
I was
and
going to
it
say.
doesn't represent Raiders very well. So when Mr. Daniels presented this, we were like, we have to change it, we have to get rid of it. So it started off with finding a design. You wanna go on about that?
Yeah. So we started, me and Landon started with an app, just a normal coloring, designing app. And we started with this, just this raccoon, without any of the colors, just gray and navy blue kind of. And we added our school colors and kind of came up with a first rough draft. I don't know if it's in here or not, but
No.
so we kind of went off of that. We all did a little vote in one of our meetings. We decided it was good. And then Landon kind of took control and did his own thing and came up with these colors. And then we did another vote. We said it was good. And then Mr. Daniels, finally, after, I don't know, 5 minutes.
Yikes, all right.
Throwing you under the bus.
He reached out to a guy named Victor, I guess, and did these designs for free. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so to add a little bit more to that, when they kind of got to their limitations of Photoshop, just kind of their ability levels, I reached out to 5 or 6 different graphic designers across the state. Victor Rios from Exposed Design shot right back and has a passion for schools and healthcare and offered to do it all for free. So opposed to other quotes, which were hundreds of dollars to do this sort of thing. So we kind of worked with Victor, got some ideas. I kind of played middleman, bouncing ideas off them. We'd meet, we'd send stuff back and forth. And then he took it and kind of tweaked some of the colors, added the OH, had a couple different ideas. Initially, we were a little concerned about like potential copyright. This is actually a custom logo that Victor tweaked and made, so this is just ours. We don't need to worry about copyright or anything like that in the future. He's giving us ownership of these per se, so we'll kind of have them. So it's a pretty big ask and a huge thank you that he did all that. So he's essentially, after tonight, going to rebrand a lot of these images and give us high quality files so we have them for printing or shirts or logos or embroidery, things like that we can share around. So, Amber, did you want to add anything?
You kind of took it away. I was going to say that too.
Sorry.
Because we have a nice variety of logos we can use for all sorts of things. I think, our other logo was outdated. It didn't look good on sweatshirts and apparel. This, I think, is going to look very well on our new apparel.
Very sharp.
Take it back to you. Yeah, right there.
That would be easy to do with a
Right,
cookie.
there you go.
So when are you thinking of it's going to go live for people to buy new merchandise?
I was kind of waiting for tonight to kind of go through a lot of those things, so I can pump it out to some of the school stores and see what we can do moving forward. It shouldn't be too long once I get the files from Victor.
Well, I can tell, I like this. This is a little bit rougher than the friendly raccoon. But the original raccoon, which I voted on originally, had 2 6-guns, one in each hand.
Oh, my!
So yeah, let's get back to the rough and ready raccoon. Yeah,
Yeah, I had a few parents through the grapevine who did bring that up.
yeah, yeah,
Very
Oh,
school
boy.
appropriate.
yeah.
Today.
Not today.
So are you looking at using all of these or one in particular?
So I think the primary focus will be the one in the center, at least for athletics and a lot of our conferences, things like that. I thought the option on the right would be a great representation for the high school. It's very
I
clean,
like that one a lot.
professional, clean cut, encompasses all the schools. You know, and then the one on the left was just a nice touch too, just something different, kind of offer a dress.
Yeah.
What's that?
On a pocket?
Yeah, a pocket, something like that, yeah. And Victor was very open for pretty much anything. He said, just throw ideas at me. He's like, I love doing this. And I was expecting it to take like a week or two. He had this back to me in hours.
That's cool. Wow.
Yeah, so he was kind of like, talk to the kids and let me know. Like, I'm excited to hear what they think. And he was chomping at the bit for their feedback. So we were kind of going back and forth. And of course, with school not being in session, that kind of delayed things a little bit because, you know, trying to get everyone on Zoom at the right time with their classes was a little difficult, but it ended up being a really cool opportunity, and I'm excited to see the future of it.
So is the thought with the navy replacing the lighter blue at some point?
I don't think necessarily replacing. I think it just kind of fit better in the logo.
Okay.
Definitely a conversation we could
At some
have at some point.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily against it. That sort of thing I think I would leave up to that council. of
Yeah, for sure.
Giving them the choice and having them kind of go through it. It was pretty interesting. At our last meeting, we brought up like Robert's rules
Okay.
and like making motions and things like that, which was a good learning opportunity. So, yeah, it's good learning.
I have a
Who has
cheat-
to do
I have a
what?
cheat sheet.
What is
Welcome
the
to
meaning of
democracy.
motion? Yeah, what is this? Yeah, so we went through the whole piece, you know. Something else I forgot to add about that too as part of those meetings is at the end of every meeting, I asked them all to write thank you cards to someone in the community, either a parent or coach or whatever, and I'll mail them to whoever or get them to whoever it is. So, you know, we only meet once monthly, but I think it's a good kind of reflection process and good leadership traits just to be able to reflect and thank mentors in your life. So that's been
Very
another
nice.
kind of part of it as well. So.
I think the next thing on our agenda should be somehow thanking Victor for what he's done for us.
Yes.
I mean, he did this for free.
Oh, yeah.
At least a little thank you card, gift card, something to recognize him in some
Yep.
way would be awesome.
Yep, that's in the works.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, awesome. Any questions?
Can I add an agenda item to your leadership meetings?
I would, sure.
Getting your high school students involved in the lower rec programs, volunteering for them. That would be excellent to see some of those athletes give back to the rec programs that are out there.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of nice.
Some of our programs right now are doing that really, really well, and some are still working there. It's on the agenda. That is something we've talked about with coaches, and it's part of those community events. It's how can we get those kids back into the school? You know, part of this council also, we planned like at the end of the year, been working with Amy and Jenny down at the middle school. We're going to take this group down and speak to 8th graders to try to bridge that gap between 8th and 9th grade athletics. You know, long term, I envision this group going down to the younger grades and doing reading sessions, kind of like some other high school kids did, but just utilizing this group in different ways. So,
I'd like to add something too. Our baseball program at the high school is offering 2 different Saturdays during the season where we'll have younger kids. We'll have like clinics kind of in the high school gym, so younger kids can come up and do pitching and hitting, and we're all going to help with them and do that. So.
The baseball program has a special connection too. So that's why that baseball connection has always had, but the other programs don't have that same connection.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping that you've got a great thing going, that it comes
Yeah.
back to the lower levels, to some of those kiddos that you are trying to build.
And I bet it would count as their community service
Oh,
hours.
I bet it
for
would.
sure.
Softball's doing that as well.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
doing
baseball
softball
as
against
well.
baseball.
Tennis does too, we do youth tennis
Yeah.
for like a job.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions?
When's your next unified basketball game that they might want?
So it's tomorrow. We play tomorrow at Maranicook, and then we play Tuesday at Halldale. And that actually wraps up the season. So Tuesday, Halldale's putting on a big like end of the season festival of champions where there'll be 2 or 3 schools that are all going, and it's a big round robin. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Good evening. Let's see. So we did set our date for our Oak Hill Adult Ed graduation. It'll be Thursday, May 25th, and it's in the auditorium. It'll be a 6 o'clock start time. It's a smaller ceremony, obviously, so we don't limit how many friends and family members come. We hope to have a bunch of people in the auditorium. It's about a 45-minute ceremony. For those of you that have been in the past, you know. We usually try to have a speaker. We have some music selections that the high school does, and then we award the diplomas, and then we have cake and refreshments in the cafeteria after. So hopefully some of you can make it there. That's May 25th. We had CPR first aid and AED class. We had, that was a full class. We had teachers, coaches, and community members participate in that. There were 10 individuals that participated. That's the second one we've offered this year. We also plan to offer one in April for other coaches and community members. So some of the other classes that we've offered between the last time I presented was a defensive driving course, which we had 10 participants in that as well. We also had our first class last night with cricket, intro to using your cricket. It wasn't as many as I was hoping. We had 3 with the hopes that that will grow. That's the first time we've offered it, so I'm hoping that one will grow a little bit. Our driver's ed classes hit a little bit of a lull in the winter, which is typical because a lot of parents don't like their children to be driving in the winter. They wait till now, so our class just started this week is back up to 10 students. So I anticipate that's partly because it's between sports seasons and also because the weather's a little bit better. So the last slide is a student that just completed with us, and she said some really nice things about our program. She came back to us as a homeschool student, and so I just thought I would share what she had to say about the adult ed program. We are seeing a healthy influx of students right now. It's unusual, to be honest with you. Usually we get them in February, but now we're starting to get, we have about 4 or 5 that have just jumped into testing and doing their high school diploma. So I anticipate our graduation numbers to double from what they did last year. And then we will have 4 or 5 that may not complete because they're just not ready yet to pass the high set or to earn all their credits. But that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. For this evening also. So we'll move down to 6, old business, our budget review.
Okay.
March 22nd.
There's no news every 2 weeks.
I mean, there could be. There's lots.
I know.
There's always something. There's always something.
All right.
And if there's extras,
If you get board member comments, you can get us updated.
yeah, we can go. If there's something
Okay, so, yeah, exactly. So this is an overview, and I want to start by saying that Sam jumping in when she did has been absolutely amazing. She's putting in probably 24/7 hours. I'm getting emails at different times of the night, first thing in the morning. I know she knows we're out and about. She's like, I'm putting this out for you to look at. So just kudos to you, really, for jumping in. Jessica is still remaining, doing her payroll and supporting the business office as well, and they're continuing to transition her out, but she's going to remain still because there's federal funds that we need to go, that Sam needs training on still. So there's still parts and pieces to it. The other thing you're going to see in your presentation, there are no numbers tonight, and that is intentional. Still going through the fine comb to make sure we're not missing anything. So remember, we had a spreadsheet with tons of layers. And when you don't create a spreadsheet, it's hard to interpret someone's spreadsheet. So a lot of what they're doing is they're working to bring everything into our system, which is ADS. And so the reports you're going to see is all going to be generated from ADS. So what they're doing is they're looking at the budget lines in the spreadsheet, they're looking at the current budget lines in ADS, making sure everything is accounted for. And also moving things in. So we will have numbers next Wednesday. We're going to make sure because we know once a number goes out, that's the number that sticks in people's heads, so we want to make sure. So, so this is an overview, just to kind of get you thinking like, okay, this is what's coming, all right? Obviously, it's always important to remember your mission, which is inspiring all learners to achieve future success. And that remains at the forefront, even though you're going to hear this is going to be a tough budget season. Kathy and I were today with the Western Maine Superintendent's Group, and everybody except for one is seeing double-digit increases this year. So we're trying to be as mindful as we can around how to meet our mission and how to be fiscally responsible, and that is a hard one. So we wanted to tell you what are we doing. The business manager, obviously Sam and Jess, are working heavily on the salary lines, looking at what the contract obligations are, and you know one of our biggest contracts is under negotiations. So we have to budget accordingly because we have to be negotiating in a fair way that it's got to be mutually discussed, but we have to plan. So part of that is depending where do we need to see from all of you. We looked at the insurance. We're meeting with the Anthem next week as well to review again what are our drivers in our insurance. We are budgeting, and you'll see that later, a 10% increase. The band should be out in the next couple of weeks, and what they do is the top and the bottom. We have been told we will be at the top of the band probably based on the wellness of our folks. What we're hoping is other people were in better shape to help that band. What we did talk about a little bit today is now that COVID is here, but we're living with it, people are now going back, right, for care they didn't do 2 years ago. They're now getting the care. So we may see bumps in that because people are going and doing the preventative, they're having surgeries they may not have had before. So, so that may play a factor.
I saw one school district was doing like 15 or 18.
15%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And today we heard between 8 and 12%. But when we checked in with our representatives, they felt 10% was fair. Let's hope it, like you said, Bob, if it goes to 15, it'll be a big adjustment. Principals and directors really worked hard with their own staff around the educational needs. What are the needs of their students? What are the needs in the classroom for materials and things that they need, not necessarily all the wants. So, but they worked hard with the staff in December, and then we met with every principal and director and reviewed their lines, really discussed why were you increasing, why were you decreasing, and did that line by line review with them. And John went around with every building and discussed capital improvement needs that he's figuring into the budget as well as into the capital improvement plan that he's putting together. And then part of that discussion was also staffing. We looked over class sizes, we looked at programming and really discussing staffing. Then part of our putting this budget together is reviewing that staffing. Staffing is the number one cost. So obviously, whenever you're looking at anything, that's going to be the highest impact. So we have begun, brainstorming, talking about how do you reconfigure, how do you work more cost effective, but still get the outcomes you want. Are there any reductions based on things we know? So those you will be hearing more as we get into the different cost centers. So, as I said, budget filters, big one is it's a needs budget. They knew, instead of saying to people, here's your amount, you spend your amount. We want to know, what do you need? And then build from there. So there are building budgets that went up a little bit and building budgets that went down a little bit, departments that went up considerable and some that did. So really they had to talk out what do we need to meet that educational mission and to do right by the students and staff of RSU4. So they did not get set amounts, but we also looked at trends over their years. So, okay, let's talk about postage. What's been your trend? So do we need to be more or less there? So it wasn't just about the needs, it was also what are your trends in spending? And they're going to be looking tomorrow at A-Team around their current budgets. What can they soft freeze and what do they need? So constant conversation about that. Then evidence of a strong return on investment. Are programs working? Are the things we're doing the best? Like Kathy, really being thoughtful about how can we best run this nutrition program? So always thinking about that. And then, of course, your school budget priorities, and I do have those on a sheet over there that we can share. We will be covering next week Cost Center 1, which is your regular instruction, then Cost Center 2, which is your special education program. We do not receive funding for career and technical education. That goes through the Lewiston School Department for RSU4. We have Cost Center 4 with other instruction, which is all your co-curricular, extracurricular programs. We have Cost Center 5, which will be student and staff support. That's your guidance, your technology, the assistant superintendent's role and responsibility. That will be in Cost Center 5. Cost Center 6 is the system administration. That's superintendent, business manager, business office, administrative support. And Cost Center 7, which is school administration. So we'll be doing those next week, and our plan is you will get a summary of that cost center and you will get the details. And then we'll take you through some slides about each of those cost centers. So you have a view of what's going on in that cost center, what is it covering, so you get a summary. And then the following week, which we'll be doing our regular school meeting, we will be doing Cost Center 8, which is really it's John's night, as we called it. He's doing, we're going to be working on Cost Center 8, which is transportation, and Cost Center 9, operations and maintenance, and then debt service and going over that. And then we will talk about the others, which will be child nutrition program, which is in the Cost Center 11, and the adult education program, and how does that figure in?
You're gonna do the first 6 or 7 in one meeting?
Yes.
It's not a regular
Don't-
board
don't
meeting.
plan on
It's not a regular meeting. So bring your,
I know, but
it's a lot, but we don't have a lot of time, so we're gonna,
So we're bringing dinner that night.
you can bring snacks,
We will.
bring snacks.
Yeah.
But the
All
way
right.
I plan to do it is you're gonna get your materials.
I know, we've always got the materials ahead of time, but usually we do 1 or 2 cost centers.
I know, but there's, the drivers
All
are
right,
the
we'll see.
drivers. Okay, yeah. So there'll be some things that, there isn't gonna be a whole lot of discussion because there isn't a whole lot that you can be discussing. But then there'll be other areas where there'll be a lot of discussion. So I figure some cost centers are gonna be, and then others more. But the big ones, obviously salaries is the biggest driver. Then you have the benefits that are budgeted 10%, and I'm hoping it won't be above that. We have maintenance needs, and, John does an outstanding job, and when you have an outstanding operations, we have a lot of needs. And he's a big advocate in it for his department. But that cost center, that's why he gets his own evening for that cost center. And you can see why. Here's some big drivers. We are budgeting 15% for water, for our public water, and we have a 135% increase in electricity. Okay, so you're going to see some of that. Those are drivers. Then we have special education. So that will be a big cost center next week, in the sense that you're going to get an overview of why that's up and what those costs are. So it's not only tuition, but transportation. There's some areas that were under budgeted this year for whatever reason. And so to bring that up to where it needs to be, that's going to be a driver, because it's not where it needs to be. It's over budget right now, so we have to be what actual costs are. And then we have not had in our expenditures main care seed, which is money that has to be paid from the district. We receive main care seed, but you have to invest in it in order to receive it. We have not had it as an expenditure, and it has to be an expenditure. So that is a driver. Now, those are the big drivers in the expenditure lines that are going to raise the budget. Separate from that are your local contribution, which I've already told you this, but I thought I'd reinforce it. We know that we have a local contribution increase to the towns of 471,803. This is not the additional local funds you already do, because you have two parts you do. You contribute local funds to meet the ED 279 in order to receive state funds, but you also give additional local funds on top of that, right? So this is just talking about that ED 279 one. So although you see in the third bullet, we received additional 124,715 from the state, because of the average evaluation of the towns going up, because the state has changed the mill rate and increased it to $7.29, those two big factors have pushed to local. So they take the total for what it is to run RSU4 in that model, they take out the local contribution, and then they determine the state funds. So you can see the state funds went down because the local funds went up. Okay? So we have that. So you have the general fund increases by those drivers. Then you have an increase because of the local contribution shift. And then we have two big areas that will have additional tax impact. They're not in the general fund. They have their own funding for their expenditures, but the revenue needs to come in to match it. One is food nutrition. This year, we did not collect from the taxpayers food nutrition. We had permission to spend it. We did not have permission to collect it. So that is got to be considered. That is going to be a driver. The other is adult education, similar. We had expenditures. We did not have the revenue to support the expenditures. So a lot of these two, especially, we are making up in the general fund. And because we're making up in the general fund, that's going to perhaps make less money at the end that would go into our fund balance. Okay? So these two items, there's going to be additional tax impact because they were not where they should have been this year, right? For whatever, for whatever reason.
I mean, they weren't on our warrant to go and
Correct.
raise?
The food nutrition was on the warrant to expend it in the cost center 11. We did not have a warrant to collect. It was missed. The adult education was about $70,000 short its revenue. We should have asked it, we raised $50,000 and we should have raised $120,000.
And the other impact in the food nutrition as well is that we have not been charging students for lunch. So what has been budgeted at, over $100,000 of anticipated revenue is much, much lower. Now you're talking about a few $1,000s versus $140 that was put into the budget as an anticipated revenue. And while the state subsidy has gone up a little bit, it certainly hasn't come up to match that deficit of revenue. So that's another piece that needs to be considered as well.
So we'll be talking more about that later. So these are just things I want, you're going to kind of, okay, here are things that are going to be under consideration. So the last one is just to remind you, and if we can get it out before the meeting, Bob, we're going to do our best, but it's really with new people in these roles, we just don't want to we don't want to give you something that we're now correcting. We want to be so if we can get it out a little bit earlier, we will do our best, okay?
Well, the corrections come because we changed.
Yes, well, that's exactly. So we want to make sure the numbers are accurate before you start to look at changing.
Yeah, we don't usually change it because the numbers aren't accurate. We usually change them because we change them.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Right, I mean, we look at the numbers,
Yes.
can we afford it, and we
Yeah.
have to modify that.
Correct.
That's why it changes.
Yeah. So March 15th, we have Cross Center 1 through 7, which I talked to you about. Then we have,
Middle school.
right? And you're at, yeah, remember, we're at the middle school on the 15th, 6:30. Then we have March 22nd, which is our regular meeting, which will cover 8 through 11. I'm trying to limit agenda items. I'll be talking to the principals tomorrow that their presentations need to be short. I mean, short. And then March 29th, we'll be doing the revenue EPS, because you'll know the total. Then you'll hear, so on the 22nd, you'll have the total. Then on the 29th, you'll have, well, what's the revenue look like? And you'll be hearing all the, okay, she's telling us this is what we're looking for, this, you'll get the big picture. Then the 12th, we have budget approval during a regular meeting. And then May 17th, we have the public meeting at Oak Hill High School. So you see Carrie Rickers on the 29th. Yeah. And then I told you last time, Jill and I and Sam, we're going to be meeting with the towns on Thursdays after every meeting. So tomorrow, we're scheduled to meet tomorrow. And so we're going to be meeting with them so that they're up to date on the information. They'll get it after you have it.
Can you
Right.
tell us when you'll be where? What town are you meeting?
We're going to meet here. We're just going to do it.
All three towns?
All three towns are coming here
Okay.
tomorrow.
And what time?
1 o'clock.
Thank you.
So they each get to bring a representative, they're each bringing a representative. Some are sending people in place of them if they can't be there. Destiny?
Do I need to be at the ones on March 15th and May 17th? No.
No.
Unless you want to.
Or the 29th. 15th, 29th, yeah.
The public can go though. Yeah, the public.
Are you 18? Gonna be 18? No, so, I mean, if you could vote, we'd have you there on May 7th.
She's no member.
Oh, that's right, she doesn't live. But you can encourage your friends that are 18 that might go. Any questions? Okay. So, keep working. Thank you.
All right, we'll move down to new business. 7.1, to approve Susan Rennie as assistant principal at Oak Hill High School as recommended by the superintendent of schools.
So moved.
Second.
Is she here today?
She is.
Hello.
Yeah, we're very excited to have Sue joining us.
Good evening.
Evening.
Thank you.
I'll leave the question to you, Bob.
I warned her, yeah.
Well, that's no fun then. So, I always like to ask our new joining staff members what brought you to RSU4, because I think my many years of experience, and we often learn the most from people that are new on what is going on, because once you get used to it, it's just second nature, so for changes. But why people are attracted in the first place is also interesting.
This is my 34th year of education. It'll be my first administrative real job. I've been a dean of students at Lewiston High School for 4 years. I don't know if you know this, but you have a wonderful reputation. I can speak to the high school students. I see them at LRTC. They wear their old logos. This is just a way to get new swag. They're polite. They're intentional. They're on time. They're courteous. They don't know somebody's watching. And I can tell from EL students, and Lewiston students, and Lisbon students, and Oak Hill students. They're great kids, and they come from a great school, and I am thrilled to be here. I am excited to start. I have a lot to learn because I didn't grow up here, and there's a lot of tradition. And in my interview, I flipped it on Marco, and I said, "What's so great about your high school? Why do I want to come here?" And he said, he thought, and he said, "It's community." And I totally agree with him. I've been visiting a couple of days in the high school, and it's amazing. I just feel at home. This is how a high school should be. Being able to talk with students, being able to talk to parents, being able to go out to the buses, being able to sit down at lunch in the lunchroom. You know, my days at Lewiston were discipline, discipline, discipline all day long, and it just gets so tiring. So I am excited to be here. I have experience with ALTAD. I can discuss that another time if you want to. That's why.
Okay, thank you.
You have a great reputation.
I can say, Bob, that after all the years I've been on the board, you've asked that question. That's probably the best answer I've heard so far.
I wouldn't slight anybody else's answer.
And she does start tomorrow officially.
Oh, boy.
Welcome.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All right. Any other questions? Right. Any other questions? None? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All right. Thank you. Welcome. All right. 7.2, to approve Jennifer Waterman as the school counselor at Oak Hill Middle School as recommended by the superintendent of schools.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
We said no, would she come back to the board? So,
All right, seeing as there's no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor? All those abstaining? Welcome, Jen. 7.3, to approve a 3-night stay at UMO for Oak Hill High School students to attend the Maine All-State 2023 Music Festival.
So moved.
Second.
Is anyone here to speak to it? Marco, are you?
No.
No? Okay.
No, there's nobody.
it's in the
I can
packet.
speak to the fact that, this is something that we've done historically. I think it's, if I remember, I apologize for not knowing off the top of my head, but if I remember, that's at Orno.
Yeah.
Is where that's held. And it's several days long. We have a number of people who will be competing, and participating in the workshops that go on there.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. 7.4, to approve adding St. Dominic Academy to the Oak Hill Lisbon Monmouth Lacrosse Co-op.
So moved.
Any discussion? Questions?
Are there any costs in adding them?
No.
And St. Dom's has actually offered, well, multiple schools have offered them involved, that if there are any additional costs, that they're willing to help out if need be.
Seeing there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Passed. 7.3, to approve Oak Hill Middle School athletes to join a Lisbon co-op for outdoor track and field.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? 7.6, to approve the first reading of the following policies. IKF graduation requirements.
So Bob did request to see the comparison to state requirements and our requirements. So I'm going to give that out to you.
Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
there will be probably.
We go.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, I look at this and kind of wonder that between what the state requires and what we put down, and is, do we really need to be that so much different between what the state requires, and especially since we don't classify some of the courses that could count under some things as like math. I don't think we count accounting or sales or something like that, where you're working with a lot of numbers as a math course, you know. And so I look at English, 4 years, that's fine. Mathematics, we want 3. The state wants 2. You know,
What was
so
interesting,
instead of
Bob,
making-
for me was it used to be 18 for the state, and now it's 11. They've dropped it significantly when COVID, from what I understand. When Kathy and I were kind of talking about it, Kathy put this together and told.
So I did put the law changed in 2000, I'm loud enough, right?
Yeah, you don't need a mic.
Okay. Never been. I did put the law changed in 2019, in how it was done. And you will notice that, during that change, the PE and the health was taken out. And there is a bill, I didn't, note that on here, that there is a bill to put PE and health back in as as a requirement. So we'll see through this legislative, session. So that is the only one that, might be added, that kind of got changed, but it did get reduced. I will say our average, around this region is between 18 to that 24. We are on the higher end. And then some have gone to like tiers, so you have different tiers of graduation requirements, but for the most part, we're right on track of what people have for local requirement.
Right, so I think for years and years, education at the high school level has been geared to prepare all students to go to college. And we know that that's not reality. We know that not all students want to go to college or need to go to college. Many of them need to go to some other type of educational opportunity, whether it's technical training or something else. Even the university systems have gotten rid of the requirement for algebra for many of their degree programs because they don't need it. If they need any segment of algebra, they teach just that one little thing that might fall into algebra. You know, so I wonder that if some of these classes that maybe the third year mathematics, we have the course available for those students that are either interested or on that track, but not require it for all students to have 3 years of mathematics. At least not the math that we basically call our third year math, right? We don't have there are some other things working with numbers. As Robbie can tell you, and I think probably Scott, there's trades out there in the fields where you use a lot of math in doing something else besides sitting in a trigonometry class, or a calculus class. So those are my concerns. Social studies, we're almost twice the requirement for social studies. Electives, 7.5, the electives serve a great purpose. But, and I guess the 10 hours community service is just 10 hours, it's not 10 credits.
10 hours.
Right, so it's just 10 hours, right, and I think I support the community service. I think it's a great deal for these athletes that we're here to, get credit for going down and working with the younger kids. But those are my concerns. I voiced them over time before. I really think that we need a holistic approach to our student population and what they need. And we either have to call some other things to move them into these classes that we now would call electives or something, to go and give them the opportunity. I mean, if we were just to look at seat time, if we equate these, we're asking them to spend twice as much time, earn twice as many credits as they need to get an accredited state of Maine. And I think the 11 is probably not an appropriate number, right? But I think maybe the individual classes, it doesn't have electives, and I think that's where we would try and get closer to the state requirements on all these others and then add in electives, whether we need to go to 24 or get down to the 18, which is the number that you mentioned in the region. it's my concerns that we move students along at their pace so they can do the best they can and so they can be successful when they go out of these doors with a diploma, and that we don't challenge them too much so that we end up having to send them to adult ed, or that they drop out because of the courses are just something that they can't handle, or that we have to see if they can classify for special ed and get some other way to classify. So those are my concerns on our graduation requirements. I don't want to dumb the students down, but I want them to be able to excel. And sometimes forcing them to do this just wipes out everything else because they don't care. If they know they're going to fail at something and they can't graduate because they can't do calculus, if that happens to be it, all right, then you lose them for everything else. So, we need to be realistic on what we want to require the students to do, and maybe offer more electives, which could be the calculus course. So those are my comments on the graduation requirements going forward.
Anyone else have any comments about the policy?
Does LRTC, how does that count? If they took classes at LRTC, is that under the electives?
It counts as electives, but like the multimedia program, I'll count it as their fine arts credit. We've had students over there taking the business academy program, I'll count that as their personal finance requirement or their economics. And I've worked with individual instructors over there for a student who is having trouble getting those 3 credits in math, but I know they're in the plumbing and heating program, I know they're in automotive, so I've worked with those instructors individually, with Marco, with Pat when she was here, to figure out ways to award credit for those students if they don't drop those programs. But we are looking at ways, with LRTC, Kathy's been involved, Marco, there's some discussions, Katie was at a recent meeting, trying to figure out, we've been asking for a long time, I want to give those specific subject area credits for what they're doing in their programs at LRTC. We just haven't had that information, but they've hired a consultant who's working on that.
Right, I was at a seminar about that at the fall conference.
Yeah.
That
So-
talk about doing that, have to go and write it up and get,
so we
but we only
try-
have how many slots for LRTC compared to how many students might fall into that criteria? Right, it's minuscule
But
compared.
to answer your question, we try to take LRTC, we try to fit it where we can, so that it's not just an elective, but we can count it for a specific area. We do that.
Yeah.
And students can demonstrate learning outside of school and present evidence for credit as well.
We've done that in the past, yes.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be in the classroom, in the doors of the classroom. I think looking at the policy, because that's what we're discussing right now, if you look under, on the second page, it says learning options may include but are not limited to. I think that gets to the point that, much like Marco was saying, it's customized to each learner. So it doesn't necessarily have to be English 1, English 2, English 3, English 4. Kids can show different pathways to get those credits, or is that not true?
No, it's not. I mean, in some of our subject areas, it is pretty lockstep.
Okay.
So that English would be one. At the same time, as Mel was saying, we do come up with some alternative ways to help students, and support them. We have different levels of English that we've been using for the last, 4 or 5 years now, Kathy, for students who are having difficulty. So there are options there. I guess when you say it like that, and when I explain it, there are options there that are different than just the lockstep 1, 2, 3, 4.
Because I hear what you're saying, Bob, around school success and young people, if they don't believe that higher education is their pathway, what's the point? If they know that they're 2 English credits down and they're supposed to graduate. Like, I see that happening with kids, and that's a tension, that's a rub of, okay, how do we best serve our kiddos, but also making sure that they have the requirements of what we believe is a high school degree.
One concern that I have as a high school student is that I can understand definitely the pressures of having to meet a lot of these credits, but for many of us that do want to go on to higher education, when we lower our credits or lower the amount that we need to achieve, it can under-prepare us for the higher education. So in our district, I know that we don't have as many of the same, like, learning requirements such as finals. So when many of us go into college and we do finals, we are kind of underprepared for that. So it creates a bigger jump from when we go to college and could quite possibly set us up for failure then, when we lower like our expectations for what we need to do now.
And I appreciate that, and I don't want to hold anybody back, right? And we need to offer the courses that are challenging for people so that those who are on that track and want that, have that opportunity. But that is a certain percentage of our graduating class that's going on. Probably not 50% are going on to college. I'm just listening to graduation ceremonies and what we say people are, kind of going forward to. So, that's less than half. So we got to worry about the whole student population. And I know I'm old, and I know I graduated long time ago, right? So, when I went to high school, I got a math class because I took accounting. I got a math course because I took sales, all right? And I took one there was another one that I got math for. I couldn't comprehend algebra in high school, and then when I went to college after my military career, I aced it. But, it was just where. So things have changed. I realize that. So I look at my past experience, but, I do see, and we get reports on dropout, and we get reports on grades, and we look at the bar graphs on how well the students are doing when they're taking their tests and all that there. And we have a big part of the population that I don't believe that this satisfies their real needs for high school education. But again, it's because they have them here in the policy that they come under the discussion.
Yeah, we've had many of these discussions at the dropout prevention meetings that we have, and in my mind, I think we have to work towards redefining successful. Just because you don't graduate in the top 10 of your class and go on to a secondary education doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. I know plenty of people that barely graduated high school, opened up their own business, supported their family, did really well, didn't have any college debt to start with, went into an apprenticeship, didn't have any college debt, and supported their family, pillars of their community and donations to the rec club and all that. I think we need to define what is a success. Is that person that goes off to a 4-year education successful compared to somebody that graduates high school with a diploma, gets into a trade, opens up their own business? That person, in my mind, is just as successful. So I think Mel does a great job at that, identifying those people, but I think it's just been loaded up on us for so long that if you don't go to 4 years of prior, upper education, college, you're not successful. And I know when I went to school, that's not the way it was, because, I imagine our dropout rate was probably a lot higher than what it is now, but people were still successful.
So I think we would recommend the chair to,
Any other comments about the
think
policy?
we do.
Well, this is in the policy, right? Because
Yeah.
it's got the requirements in there, but yeah, the rest of it,
Okay, seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor? Any abstaining? All right, we'll move on to the next one. 7.5, 7.6, sorry. IKFA, early education. Graduation. I can read, I promise. Early graduation. Any questions or discussion?
this is my just question. It's been February 1st for a while. But I'm glad to see that we allow an option if somebody doesn't request by February 1st, that we're still going to consider it. Yeah, I would think it's kind of a no-brainer. If they got their courses and credits and they want to graduate, they go out and then they can come back and walk if they want to, but they'll probably be busy at work.
Any other discussion? Seeing as there's none, all those in favor? IKFB graduation exercises.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Committee reports, finance and facilities.
Yep, the Finance and Facilities Committee met at 5:30 this afternoon, and we discussed a large topic, large agenda of topics. I'll start with the finance piece. We are eight months, or 66.7% of our year completed as of February 28th, 2023. Revenues year-to-date, we've received $13,662,304.87, which is 64.17% of anticipated revenues. So we are on track. And on the expenditure side, year-to-date, we've expended $12,560,418.25, which is 60.47% of the budget. So we discussed a couple items in debt service that got paid out today, which was a large amount, and we'll see that on the next financial report. And we also discussed basically how we're getting our revenues on track and everything's coming in all right. So everybody's caught up again, so everything's looking good there. We don't have a hard freeze, right, Katie? So
No, we're going to talk about a soft freeze tomorrow.
yeah, we're gonna, coming down to the end, so we'll get better numbers as far as that goes. Any questions on the financial piece? None? All right, we'll go to facilities. You heard Jonathan's report on the facilities. We discussed classroom space evaluation with Katie, and I guess we'll have more for that on an agenda item when we get down to it.
When we get clear.
Yeah, as we get going along. So that was the discussion that we had about class sizes and closing one building, two buildings, which building. We heard from a representative from Siemens about our building HVAC systems and where we stand with those. We also talked about, we heard a discussion about, I guess Laura asked a question about whether or not students could stay in their towns and go to their existing schools. And Katie presented some of those scenarios to us that we'll be getting more information later on. And Jonathan's going to look at what the bus schedule would look like for that. We also talked about the revolving renovation fund money that we were accepted, that we will accept. And at Libby Tozier, we're going to be spending $133,903 for ADA improvements and bathroom renovations. And in Sabattis, we're going to be spending $70,473 for door replacements and bathroom renovations. And we discussed whether or not to put it on a warrant article to pay for our share of that, which is 34% is what we have to pay back with a 0 interest loan. And at Libby Tozier, that would be $46,000, and at Sabattis, that would be $24,223. And whether or not we put that on a warrant article to pay it all in this year's budget, or spread it over 5 years to pay that back. So that'll be another topic for discussion when we get a little bit farther on. You heard from Johnson about Oak Hill, and you heard from Kathy about food service. So that's what we had. Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
CAI and technology.
I'll be reporting. So CAI met this evening. The focus of our conversation was on the early release late start survey that recently went out. Kathy's going to hand that out to you. We actually had a great response. 736 responses.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was
Really
very
good.
close to the original
Yeah.
survey that we did. And as you can see on the bottom graph, the majority is looking to keep the present schedule. And we'll be discussing this on the March 22nd meeting when we dive into the calendar. That's pretty much it.
There's a couple of themes that we wanted a little clarification around, particularly around LRTC students, because that seemed to be a theme that we saw that came up for students and for parents that have kiddos that are at LRTC, and the thought around potentially looking at early release only on full weeks. So if there was a Monday holiday or a Friday workshop, having students go to school those full days, so they're not having a early release on a Wednesday and a day off. So that's stuff that we all need to kind of talk about as a board when we're thinking about the calendar.
Reading some of these comments, looks like parents want Fridays.
Yeah, that was a thing.
Yes, that may have been one of mine.
There's more than one.
And the way that Kathy put this together, you're going to see when you look at this, there's comments from stakeholders, and they voted yes for early release, but then when you get down there, they're like, no, don't do it, or it should only be an hour. So there's lots of themes that kind of came up.
Yeah, we can dig deeper when we discuss the calendar, like the Friday thing that Kathy had mentioned. It's a day that a lot tend to take off, so call outs and things, so.
Thank you. 9, any board member comments? Okay. All right, and on the agenda, you'll see that we have our future meetings. Katie already kind of went over some of those. So without any objection, I would go ahead and declare this meeting adjourned. 8:07.